That wasn't me. How many times do I have to say it? David Chambers grievously massaged his eyelids and slumped back in his chair. What was the point of this? The sheer number of times recounting the story gave him a throbbing headache. David, calm down, Dr. Olivia Shepard instructed with a maternal-like stoicism and serenity. Think with your head. You were caught on camera. Who else could it have been? David grabbed the cane next to his chair and shook it violently. Beats me. I'm not good with names, but faces, I know those. And I'm certain that was my fucking clone on that video. Dr. Shepard grew confused. She leaned forward in her chair and focused her eyes on David as she adjusted her curved, studious-looking glasses. Just breathe and start from the beginning, she instructed. You think I'm crazy? Of course not. David began the long, hellish walk down memory lane. Each nightmare was worse than the other. I first saw him about a month ago. Dr. Shepard jotted down notes as he spoke. What did he look like? David glanced over at an old TV and VCR sitting between him and the doctor. That was new. Hey, what's this for? He asked. Later, David. Come on now. Try to stay focused. No distractions. What did he look like? I told you. It was me. He recalled every detail of himself that came to mind. His cold gray eyes, long and oval face, square chiseled jaw, his tall, thin build, and his short taupe black hair with a colic that poked up just above his left ear. Dr. Shepard raised her hand that was holding her pen, signaling for this traffic jam of a conversation to come to a halt. Let me stop you right there. In our last session, you mentioned the colic being on the other side. David stopped and thought to himself for a moment. I did. Everything was reversed. We even dressed the same. Did he have a cane too? No, he didn't. See? Good job. There you go. With what? He smashed his cane against the wall. It's the same bullshit every session. How many times do I gotta repeat myself? As many times as it takes, David. Her voice had turned from a caring mother to a chastising schoolteacher. As long as it takes to help you understand that there is only one you. Did I ever tell you I was a twin? She sighed. In just about every session. He died when you were 11 years old. Enough with the conspiracy theories. Focus on the present. She glanced down at David's legs. They were anxiously fluttering about, his right leg in particular. How have you been feeling? Okay, I suppose, he answered. Are you taking your medication? The Abilify? It's not my favorite thing in the world, but I choke it down. What about exercising? David said nothing. He shrugged his shoulders and slumped a little lower into his chair. Now we talked about this. With sarcopenia, you gotta stay as active as you can. Physical activity does the body good. Releases endorphins to help make you happy, not to mention the mental benefits. Yeah. Is this what you get paid $6 a minute for? To teach me shit I learned in health class? Tell me something I don't know. Dr. Shepard had the wit of a loaded six-gun. She quickly fired back with a snappy comment. If you used your gym membership instead of ogling girls in yoga pants for $60 a month, you might land a date with one. Wouldn't a social life be nice? That was a low blow. In his physical prime, David had a build that was like a living interpretation of Michelangelo's statue of David, and his James Bond-style good looks made him popular with the ladies. Now it was all being taken away from him, all because of an advanced case of sarcopenia, a word he'd never heard of before and could hardly pronounce. Now a scrawny, withering body rested where perfectly toned arms and a six-pack of abs used to call home. I was just on a date not too long ago. You know that, he snapped back. That was when I first saw him. Who? Him, me, the other one. Let's talk about that night again. I'd rather not. He tried to think of any excuse he could to get out of this. Time's up anyway. We have plenty of time. Talk. And don't waste it. David shut his eyes and tried to remember everything he could. Each deep breath he took propelled another part of him back to another time. First his body, then his mind. The walls of the claustrophobic doctor's office melted away as David vividly navigated the memory of his date. A couple of weeks prior, David had a date with Allison Graham, a lovely young soul he had met the way most people do in this day and age of technology, through a cell phone. After 3 weeks of chatting through video calls and text messages, the pair had finally agreed to meet. It was to be a delightful dinner for two at the quaint Ristorante Dispacci. This was the first date that David could remember being on in some time, and he was going to bring his A game. Even though he didn't have the body of an athlete anymore, he maintained an unfaltering pride and made sure he looked his best. He arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, dressed in a Spanish gray two-piece suit. He tugged at the collar of his white shirt, trying to breathe. The slim fit and the material of the suit made him waver and itch with anxiety. Clutching his cane in his hand, he lurched his way over to the bar and ordered a scotch and soda. He took small, deliberate sips from the glass and periodically glanced down at his watch. The agreed-upon meeting time came, and still, Allison wasn't there. He took one last gulp from his drink and beckoned the bartender to order another. 30 more minutes passed, and she still wasn't there. He pulled out his cell phone and dialed Allison's number. He placed the phone to his ear, and it rang twice before he could hear a prominent ringing from across the room over the dull, mundane chit-chat of other patrons. Looking around to determine the source of the noise, David could see a lone woman sitting at a square table, draped in a tablecloth with a dimly lit candle decorating the center. "Hello?" a voice spoke into the phone. "Hey there, Allison, it's me. I see you there. Don't move, I'll be right over." David hung up his phone and hurried over to the table. While he was pulling out his chair, he noticed that there were 2 sets of drinks on the table. He hoped he hadn't kept her waiting long. "What, did you get lost or something?" she barked at him. He apologized. "I'm so sorry about that. I didn't see you sitting there." This was odd. David still had the text message on his phone. It was there in black and white that they agreed to meet at the bar. Allison leaned over and playfully nudged him on the shoulder. "Guess I have one of those plain faces, huh?" There was a warm hint of sensuality in her voice that sent shivers down David's spine. "Oh no, not at all. There's nothing plain about you." Subtlety just wasn't an option. He couldn't think of any other way to say it. This girl was perfect. She matched her profile picture to a T, and she needed no filters or Photoshop to augment her already exceptional beauty. Nervous energy made David's leg twitch and vibrate the table. He quickly tried to change the subject and ease any awkwardness, but he was sure even the people at the next table felt it. "So, what looks good to you?" he asked, as he was feverishly searching the table for a menu. "I'm thinking fettuccine Alfredo. You?" Her eyes widened with disbelief. "After the dinner we had, I'm embarrassed to even think about food again." What was she talking about? He'd only just gotten there. Suddenly, a waiter showed up and slapped the check on the table. David's heart fluttered in disbelief. This couldn't possibly. But there it was before him. An entire meal itemized in black and white. David searched for his wallet in his pockets and found nothing. Where could his wallet have possibly gone? He was scouring under the table, assuming his wallet must have fallen out somewhere, when a loud, masculine, exuberant laugh erupted, springing David's head up and slamming it against the table. He climbed back to his feet and investigated the ruckus. Back at the bar, a man clothed in a similar sports coat, as he sat amongst a circle of friends brandishing a leather wallet with the initials DC, was making promises of free drinks for the rest of the night. "Son of a bitch!" "What's the matter?" Allison asked. "It's that guy over there," David explained. "When I was up at the bar, Baxter must have snatched my wallet." Allison tilted to the side to get a better view of the culprit. "Stay here, I'll handle this," said David. Allison gave David a look of concession. He puffed up his chest, steadied himself with his cane, and took slow, unbalanced strides back towards the bar. "All right, buddy, hilarious. Give me back my wallet." The man continued laughing amongst his friends. It was as if the words went right through him. "Asshole!" David poked and prodded at the man's shoulder. "I said, give me back my wallet." This was the last straw. No more messing around. With all the force he could muster, David grabbed the man by his shoulders and forced him to turn around. He had a ferocious look in his eyes, ready to clobber the thief who had taken his wallet, and with it, his hard-earned money. David's rage turned to astonishment when the pair locked eyes. Looking back at him was none other than himself. What was going on here? A deafening silence overtook the room. He was staring into a mirror. Every blink, every facial tick. This person could match David with internet speed precision. It didn't stop at the face, though. His double could perfectly mirror any movement he preconceived. Suddenly, the lookalike let out a devilish smile, showing its first signs of life as a separate entity from David. He slid David's wallet into his coat pocket and gingerly slapped him on the shoulder, as if to say thanks for letting him borrow it. He gave David a wink and casually headed out of the door. Sound and life itself had finally returned as the humdrum conversation of customers flooded the airwaves once again. Hey, stop! Where do you think you're going? David was at pains physically and mentally. His bum leg had rendered him unable to pursue the man. He was only just out the door, while the man was already turning the corner at the end of the block. Leaning against a light pole to ease the pressure on his leg, David huffed and puffed. Sweat and tears poured from the face of a startled man with a bruised ego. A nice date with a lovely lady had dissolved into a disaster, seemingly almost before it began. Now, to make matters worse, there was someone running around, almost identical to him. David peered into his wallet. Everything was there, save a few bucks and his driver's license. "Excuse me, sir. Is there a problem?" a voice called out. Allison and one of the restaurant waiters had come rushing over to the light pole. "What's the meaning of this?" "Did you get him?" Allison asked, concerned. "Son of a bitch got away from me." David lowered his head in shame. "What's going on?" The waiter wanted answers. "Do I need to get the police involved?" "Maybe you do," Allison snapped. "Someone tried to rob my friend." The waiter pressed on with questions. "Did you get a look at the guy?" "Yeah, he looked... It was..." David thought long and hard before proceeding. The sundry aroma of scotch and soda still emanating from his breath would do nothing to add to his credibility. Holding his tongue seemed to be the best and only option. David opened his eyes, and reality slowly filtered through his senses again. The night had turned back into just a memory, and he was back in the comfort of Dr. Shepard's office. "Go on. What else happened?" the doctor asked. I told them the guy threw my wallet down and ran off, that I couldn't really see his face. I mean, what was I going to say? Excuse me, but that guy who looked exactly like me? Yeah, that wasn't me. Now, if you don't mind, I won't be paying for the meal that my date swears we ate together, or the drinks a bar full of people saw me buy." "Did you call the police that night?" "I didn't want to draw any attention to myself. I needed to figure out what exactly I saw." Dr. Shepard scribbled notes. "So you didn't initially believe what you saw?" "I was drinking. I figured maybe I saw someone dressed like me, and my mind was playing tricks on me." "What made you think otherwise?" David tapped his cane against his leg and thought to himself. "About a week or so went by, and everything seemed cool. Then one day I was grocery shopping, and it happened again." "You saw him again?" "Not just me. Other people, too." David's stroll down memory lane continued. It was 10 days after the encounter. The whining buzz of an electric scooter echoed down the frozen food aisle of the A&P food store. A medley of foods and snacks occupied the front cart. There was just one more item that David needed from here. A can of chili, placed just out of arm's reach. Seeing no other option, David asked a woman passing by for some help. "Excuse me, ma'am." His arm extended out towards the canned chili. "Can you give me a hand, please? This weather is murder on my knees and my back." A thunderous clang erupted as the canned goods slammed against the cold metal of the cart. He hadn't expected the woman to be so forceful. "Thank you, I suppose?" He was unsure of what else to say. "Yeah, whatever." The woman turned and started angrily stomping away. A faint whisper floated down the aisle. "Asshole." "Excuse me?" asked David. She continued moving away, ignoring him. What the fuck is her problem? The scooter beeped as David threw it in reverse and looped around to the other side. An elderly woman and her giant shopping cart blocked her path. Hey, would you mind just moving your cart over a little? The question went unanswered. Just a smidgen? Nothing. Perhaps she couldn't hear? The wheels on her cart whined and hissed, moving at a snail's pace. Son of a bitch! How could I get her attention? Looking down at the settings on the scooter, he turned one knob. If she couldn't hear him, perhaps a gentle nudge would get her attention. The knob clicked and set a new speed setting. David gripped the scooter's handle and twisted. The scooter violently nudged forward. It was faster than expected. The elderly woman cried out in pain. A mixture of flesh and metal plummeted to the floor. The aisle flooded with milk, broken eggs, sodas, and a variety of foods and beverages. I'm sorry, I didn't think it would go that fast. The woman who had helped David in the previous aisle came rushing over. Mom? Mom, are you okay? She helped the old lady to her feet. These two were a mother and daughter? Couldn't get any better. That asshole smashed into me, she cried, tears streaming down her pale, wrinkled face. The daughter turned her attention over to David. You again? Oh, crap. If assholes like you wouldn't take all the scooters and left them for the people who needed them, this wouldn't happen. I need this just as bad as anybody else, David protested. I have a leg and back problems, damn it. He hated when people assumed his health went hand in hand with his youth. Many people have problems not so obvious. A plethora of people filled the area to investigate the incident. One worker recognized David. Ah, geez, not you again, the worker shouted. That's the third time this week. You know you're not allowed in here. Get on up out of that scooter. What in the blazes was he talking about? What do you mean? I've been buying my food here for years now, David asserted. We have you on camera. Someone escorted you out of here multiple times, the worker exclaimed. This is the last straw. I'm calling the police. While David was being escorted out of the store, he caught a brief glance of another man in a checkout line a few spaces down. There he was again. That mirror image of a man who had shown up on his date with Allison. Once again looking and dressing the same. He chuckled and gave David a playful wave goodbye as the man he copied was evacuated from the premises. And here he was now, seeing a court-ordered shrink and charged with disturbing the peace. Never in a million years did he imagine his life would have turned out this way. Dr. Shepard put down his notepad. There was nothing else to say. I want to thank you for taking the time to talk this over with me, David. I think we're making real progress. How so? He asked. Well, she explained. To start, I think your grasp on reality has gotten better. What are you talking about? Do you remember the last time we went through this story? He sat up in his chair and pondered the question. Come to think of it, none of his sessions had been memorable. Dr. Shepard continued. The last time you told me the story, the other you played a much more significant role. Now he was just waving goodbye. Don't be ridiculous, David shouted. I've been nothing if not consistent with you. They all said they'd seen me in there before, able to walk. If I could just see the damn security tape from the store, I could prove it to you, to everyone. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think there is something you need to see now. She retrieved a remote from her desk and started up what looked like an old home movie. What's this? David asked as he focused his attention on the screen. The police released the security footage from the store, David, she explained. I think this is crucial to your therapy. You really believe there is a second version of you running the streets. Okay, prove it, and point him out. David thoroughly gawked at the screen ahead of him. He had expected to see just the scooter incident, but there was so much more. It was like he was peering into memories that were not his. There it was again, irrefutable proof in black and white footage of him in the store and outside in the parking lot. The tape had everything from him walking perfectly inside and out of the store. And in some other footage, he could see himself arguing with other customers. And in one instance from the parking lot footage, even keying a car. But he remembered none of this. The date of the last bit of footage flashed across the screen. He remembered this crystal clear. This was when he got escorted out for knocking the old woman down with the store's scooter. And the footage had a perfect view of all the registers. Here it came. The moment of truth. This was just what he needed to exonerate himself of any wrongdoing. Right there. Don't you see him? David jumped up and pressed his finger to the glass screen. Dr. Shepard paused the video. Right there. Another me. He squinted his eyes for a closer look. The ancient VHS tape flickered in and out of focus. What? David's jaw could have crashed right to the floor if muscle and bone had not supported it. On the tape before him was nothing more than an empty checkout line. Dr. Shepard helped him back to his chair. Don't you see now? It's just you. It always has been. He had no words left in him. He thought for sure this was it, that he would finally get the exoneration he craved. He wanted to believe so badly that there was another explanation. Maybe there was another him, or maybe this was all an elaborate prank. He wept, and the doctor handed him a box of tissues. We need to stop now, because this is a lot to process. I understand how hard and scary this must be for you, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. These tears are telling me you're ready to accept reality for what it is, and the real healing can begin. He still refused to speak. Okay, now, I want you to double your dose of Abilify. I'll see you again next Tuesday, and after a month, let's see what happens. Do you understand? The most he could do was nod his head. He got up and turned to walk out of the office, leaving his cane. He didn't need or want it anymore. Outside of Dr. Shepard's office, David sat in his car trying to process his latest discovery. The rain beating down on his car perfectly matched his emotional state. The car pulled away, but he noticed that there was a silhouette of a man in his back seat. He slammed on the brakes. The silhouette leaned forward, revealing a face. David's face. The two locked eyes in the rearview mirror. Enough of this. David pushed through his anger and anxiety. Who are you? And for the first time, the other man spoke. The other half of you. Thinking quick, David locked his doors and threw the car into drive. The man flew back into the back seat and struggled to climb up. He was just about to grab the steering wheel from David when he slammed on his brakes, sending the double flying through the windshield. How could anyone deny this? A broken windshield and the body to go with it? The double lay out in the street, flat as a board, for a few seconds. With the vigor of a dead bird, the man staggered back up to his feet and limped away. It all happened before David could realize what was taking place. First the sound of a droning horn, and then the sight of a body flying high in the air as another car passing struck it. Suddenly the view had all changed for David. He didn't know who he was or where he was anymore. One moment he was in his car, watching his mirror image fly through the windshield. And now he was face down on the street, eviscerated by shards of glass and concrete that had torn into his skin. Blood had shot from his mouth like a fountain, and his vision grew blurry. Before he lost consciousness, he could faintly hear the other driver. Oh my God, man, what are you doing? You came out of nowhere. Don't you wear your seatbelt? Everything went black. Approximately 1 week later, there was a memorial service in David's memory, with Allison, Dr. Shepard, and a few others in attendance. At the end of the service, the priest said a few words on David's behalf. And now we say goodbye to this brave young man who, after years of dealing with schizophrenia, may now rest easy in the long arm of our Lord. May he rest in peace. As the priest spoke, those in attendance whispered back and forth, discussing David and the many ways they knew him. He was such a fun guy to go out with, loved to eat. The guy was always ready to buy a round of drinks and get the party started. A little dramatic at times, don't you think? Maybe a bit harsh sometimes. That was him. It's that time of year again, where the darkness feels that much darker, and every creak and groan of your house feels that slight bit more unsettling. It's that time of year where your sense of fear and dread creeps more deeply upon you, and your fears are suddenly heightened. But there's no need to fear. We have the perfect solution for you. Spooktober 2024 is once again sponsored by VENATOS. As you all know by now, VENATOS offers the topmost quality in gaming equipment, and with their top-rated customer service, you won't have any buyer's remorse nightmares. even if you live on Elm Street. You can avoid the terror of added fees because VENATOS ships free to the United States, Canada, and hell. Well, hell, Michigan, that is. What are you waiting for? Go to VENATOS.com today. Still scared? How about you use code PRESSSTARTMOM at checkout and save an additional 10% off your order? That should keep the monsters at bay. For now.